All right, so I am thrilled hanging out here with Michael Gordon. We're connecting to him from North Adams, where I guess preparations are all already underway for the big loud weekend coming up August 1st through 4th, I believe, or 1st to the 3rd. So, yeah, um, really excited to talk to you. I attended for the first time a loud weekend. And, as we were speaking before off mic, I've been around my share of festivals. I thought it was the greatest festival I've ever been to. I mean, I was just absolutely stunned. Um, so, what would you say some of the ingredients are that make it such a magical experience?
Oh, well, thanks so much. We, we're here at North Adams in this incredible environment called Mass MoCA, which is actually, I think, the largest contemporary art museum in the world in terms of space. It's a huge former factory. It was a mill, a printing factory in the late 19th century and into the 20th century, and then an electronics factory called Sprague Electronics, which ran until 1985. And in 1985, Sprague Electronics basically employed 6,000 people in the town of North Adams. And when they moved their factory, the town quickly disintegrated and became kind of basically the place in Massachusetts that led all of the problem, um, highest teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, all that list of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trouble.
Lots of trouble. And there's this big empty factory that was sitting there for 15 years, and a very enterprising young art curator named Joe Thompson was able to get get a grant from the state of Massachusetts to start an art museum. And they just started building by building because the place really was kind of, the buildings themselves were kind of disintegrating. And now it's almost, after this, Mass MoCA is celebrating 25 years. And when we first came up here, we had to wear hard hats to walk through
Wow.
the museum. There was no museum. It was just to walk through the campus here, these huge buildings. So they're the Mass MoCA team is pretty inspiring, and the place itself, I think, physically is just a wonderful place to be making music, because for one thing, it's filled with contemporary art, and they don't have a permanent collection. They don't keep anything longer than 25 years, which in this case, on its 25th anniversary, means they're taking down some of the original installations that were put up 25 years ago when they first opened. And so you're surrounded by very recently made artwork. They've got a great vibe here. Their staff, the administration, the crew is just fantastic to be around. So that's the scene. And 3 weeks before Loud Weekend, close to 50 musicians come to North Adams. Part of that group is made up of the Bang on a Can All Stars and Julia Wolf, David Lang, and and I'm there. So the kind of whole Bang on the Can team, and we have some other guest artists or special guests as faculty, and then 30 younger musicians that we call fellows, who are all in the first stages of their careers. They're all over 21, so they're a lot of them are already out in the world doing things, or they've they're in their finishing stages of some kind of music study. And we get together for 3 weeks, and we are doing all kinds of musical activities. So that's the setting. That's what leads up to Loud Weekend. And I think that I think part of the spirit of the festival is that a lot of the performances are happen because the festival is basically a combination of the work that we prepare over 3 weeks and invited guests who come in at the end just to play. And some of those guests are coming in after we've been rehearsing their music, and they're composers who are coming in to coach the musicians, or some of these guests are just coming in to play a concert, and then they leave. So that's how the festival is made up. But the spirit of those people now, by the time we get to Loud Weekend, we have 45 or 50 musicians who've been together for 3 weeks, basically from morning to evening, eating meals together, rehearsing. And yesterday about 30 of us just went, took this incredible hike up one of the kind of the classic hike in the area. It's called Pine Cobble. Just next time you're up here, you go up. And so there's an incredible spirit. It's not just like I came in for my gig and I played and I left, but it's really the same, 50 people who are going from concert to concert, performing in different combinations, and it's the culmination of this time period. So that's the setting.
Yeah, yeah, and I should say that those 30 young musicians who are coming from all over the world, they are killers. These are world class young musicians. So you have the energy of the young musicians, you have the energy of new compositions, you have the energy of incredibly established artists like Meredith Monk and others who are coming through. I guess you have the setting of the gallery, which, as you said, is kind of this, or the museum, it's kind of an up from the ashes, inspiring space. One could make a detour and say, I mean, James Turrell's work, which is such a big part of that museum. If people aren't familiar, he's an artist who works with light, and that alone is is so incredible. Is he someone? Is he someone that you've interacted with at any point?
Not at all.
Uh,
We've never met him, or he's never
mhm.
been around here while we've been here.
Okay.
So we perform, he has several installations at Mass MoCA, and we've performed inside those installations.
Oh wow.
Actually, fairly regularly, because we do performances. Although Loud Weekend is the festival at the end, there are, in many cases, one or two performances every day leading up to Loud Weekend, and and so that's performing in one of Turrell's installations is the kind of go-to special event
Yeah,
that happens several times over the summer.
that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's radio is probably not the best place to discuss his work, but you could just trust us that it's absolutely, transcendent experience to be in his environment. And that was a tangent, but that last element is also that the music is really wall to wall. Like you have, I don't know, several performances going on at all times, from dusk till dawn, basically. Dusk till dawn,
Yeah.
dawn till dusk.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if you're, I don't know when this podcast is going to be
It'll
up
come out this week, next week. So before the event, yeah,
for. Okay.
yeah.
Well, leading up to Loud Weekend, we at this point there's one concert every day at 1:30,
Oh, okay.
and it's a movable concert. So the performer, there are usually three performances of of works around 10 minutes or something, and the performers choose the location that they would like to perform in. So uh, it's really kind of quite spectacular to be in a someplace in this museum, which is, almost every room has something inspiring about it, and then move to another room for another piece. And
Wow.
I'll never forget, um, there was an artist here whose exhibit whose artwork included hanging these upside down cars hanging from the ceiling. And that's the type of thing that there's so much space here at Mass Mocha. That's the type of thing that they can,
They
there's
green
this,
light that one, yeah.
yes, they green light that one, exactly. And you have this, petite flute player standing under this upside down car that's hanging from the, playing some pretty wild flute music. Sometimes you see things like that, and they're just incredible experiences. So that's happening. That's happening leading up to Loud Weekend. We have concerts every day at 1:30 and sometimes at 4:30, and and we try to. One of the events that happens on Loud Weekend every single year is that Mark Stewart, who I know
Yeah, we
you
just
just had
chatted, yeah.
you just chatted with him. He's the guitarist in the Bang on a Can All Stars, and he actually has a house in North Adams and a barn, and in that barn the barn is just filled with instruments that he has made. And he does a workshop with the musicians here where they spend about a week making instruments, and then they do this wild performance outside in the courtyard at about 10 o'clock at night, something like that. And it's just opening up horizons for the musicians that are here over the summer, and it's a pretty great audience experience also.
Yeah, we got to witness that barn with the I forgot what he calls it, but it's a bicycle that you spin, and then these whirly things, the whirlicopter or something like that. You go woo 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 woo. I mean, it's just unbelievable how inventive he is, and as his musical concept is so wide open, extending even to that instrument making. I'm always curious, like you guys, the Bang on the Can All Stars, like you, what when did when did that spark hit and you guys it became a real thing? Like when we were like, oh my god, we're doing something. What happened in?
Well, Julia Wolf, David Lang, and I, we started this this thing called the Bang on a Can Marathon in 1987 in the Exit Art gallery, which it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a gallery in Soho, and that was our first. That was our first event. We basically started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and ended at two in the morning, and we yeah, it was just 1987 was a really different atmosphere in New York. It was kind of, I mean, we really started this festival out of like complete depression. It was like kind of who's going to listen to this music and who's going to play it, and maybe if we do something a little bit different, and people will come, and it actually was a success from the very beginning. People liked the format, and it was very relaxed, and we sold beer, and kind of, the three of us basically produced the concert and like moved the instruments around, and, you know, sold tickets at the door and handed people cash after they came out, off the stage. And we invited John Cage to come, and he was like, okay, I'll come by, and we actually performed his work at the very end of this 12-hour concert at 1 o'clock in the morning. And he said, well, it's too late for me, I'm asleep by then, but I'll come by during the day. So John Cage came, and he came to the door, and he insisted on buying a ticket. He took out
Oh,
$10, right? And we were like, well, we can't sell you a ticket. You're our guest. And he was, so, well, I'm not coming in unless you take my money. So we kind of had a great experience, and he hung out for 4 hours, and um, a lot of, there was a lot of excitement, and so we started doing this yearly 12-hour concert. We did it for a few years, and then people started calling us and saying, hey, we want you to come, to Minneapolis or Toronto or, London or something like that. And we were like, well, that's great, but we're really a music festival. I don't know how we're going to come to Minneapolis. And we got this idea of starting, there were performers that were so fantastic. One of those performers was Mark Stewart, he's now the only original member of that group that's still playing in the Bang on a Can All Stars. But and we just asked some of these performers who had come and played on other pieces or played solo works, and would you play together and do a tour? Would you go to Minneapolis or go to Toronto? And that's how the Bang on a Can All Stars started. Say around 1992, 93, 94 were the beginning years of that. And I think, I don't know whether people thought it was still going to be going on 30 plus years later, but
yeah, it got its own momentum.
yeah, it did.
So, the promoter in me is always curious. I've heard stories of how you guys, someone, I can't remember the exact technique, but it was a very organic way that they said that when you had an event, how you get the word out. How would you, spread the word?
Well, back then, when we first started out, there was no, there was no email, right?
Right.
And no one had these phones with texts and stuff. We just decided that the people we wanted, the people who we're going like what the scene was is that people collected addresses, right? You went to a concert and you had people had mailing lists, and so groups made their mailing lists available. You could buy them, right? So you could buy a mailing list um, from a concert venue, or you could buy a mailing list from a dance venue or a poetry venue or a theater venue or something like that. Sometimes they were sold and sometimes they were shared, and that was just kind of what people did, because how are you supposed to let people know? So we just at the very beginning we just decided, look, everyone that's going to music venues, they already know what they like, and we're not going to really be able to build an audience from people who know what they like. So we decided we would only try to get people who went to avant-garde dance or to poetry readings, or to you know to new theater, stuff like that. So that's basically how we started building an audience, is by um, we would just mail out postcards basically with crammed full of everything we could put on them.
Hand drawn or typed or what?
No, they were kind of um, crudely made, but not hand drawn.
Okay.
And then, and at that time, there was the Village Voice, and
Mm-hmm.
the Village Voice had a centerfold, and you'd open the voice, and they'd have these things called voice choices, right? One they'd go, okay, this is the music to see this week, this is theater to see this week, this is the dance to see this week. If you got a voice choice, you're basically sold out. It was a very, very concentrated way of getting information. Now there's so many ways people get information. The actual power of something that would have seemed so incredibly powerful back then, like big article in the New York Times, right? There's very little effect on an audience,
Yep.
right? But back then, something like voice choice, that was all you needed.
Yeah. It's a hit, baby. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
a
that kind of
couple
thing.
lines from one of the critics saying, this was cool, and that's where people went to get their information. So yeah, and I guess after that it's just word of mouth.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's amazing to hear how you kind of looked outside the typical direct music fans who associate with a particular music. They know what they like, and it's a very interesting kind of concept, because I think a lot of the music that people listen to has to do with their self concept or their own identity. I think of myself as a Bach person, so I listen to Bach. I think of myself as a jazz person or hip hop person. And so when you go the other direction, say, all right, we're going to go to the new theater people, the people who are just open to experiences. That explains a lot, because the thing that I admired the most about your festival was the open-minded audience. I mean, these people are game for anything, and I've never seen that before. Actually, I've never seen an audience that's just really, you could throw anything at them. No one's getting up and leaving. They're gonna ride it out, and that's amazing.
Yeah, the audience really is amazing. I mean, that's kind of like the product of 30 plus years of developing an audience. And I remember after some very, very challenging, very kind of off the charts experimental work, someone coming up to me and saying, that was the most amazing experience I've ever had, and I never want to listen to that piece of music again.
You considered that high praise, or how did you?
Well, I consider that a expression of how great the audience is.
Yeah.
Kind of the audience. They're really there not to hear the same thing or same old thing, and they really want to hear something new, and they really want to have a new experience, and um, and that's it. They want to be challenged, and they want to listen. And they're willing to do that. And I think in many cases, people discover music, they discover ensembles or composers, or they discover something that they really like, they really become dedicated to. And in other cases, they have an experience, and they evaluate it in some way. They listen hard, and they're appreciative.
So I know a lot of people know this guy Phil Shep at WKCR, and people get frustrated because he talks a lot. And so to not Phil Shep, I do have some music of yours queued up. Um, there's a piece for 7 vibraphones.
Uh-huh.
I'm handwriting it. I think it's "Loved M" or something like that. Could you cue that one up for us, and then we'll take you play for the audience. Do you know the piece I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, wait a second. I wrote it, right?
Well, yeah, but maybe you wrote a lot of pieces for 7 vibraphones.
Okay.
So yeah, what are we gonna hear now?
Well, this piece was actually written to be installed and performed at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. They asked me to write a piece after, in memory of the people lost during the COVID pandemic. And I thought about it, and I just thought, uh, the sound of metal ringing, it can be played on, in this case it's being played on vibraphones, but it can also be played on any tuned metals. They're almost like bells or chimes ringing, and I just took the name Loved, because I just thought, well, what is it that these people that we lost had in common? And I just thought,
Mm.
well, they were loved. The installation was really beautifully done. They hung 7 speakers in a section of the gardens, and the piece is just around 7 minutes,
Wow.
and every hour, uh, it just came through the speaker. So it really kind of was meditative. It is a work that's supposed to make you reflective. And then I did go to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens with Mantra Percussion, a New York-based percussion ensemble, and they performed it live several times in the course of a day. And I think the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens is bringing the piece, the installation back this, let's see, spring of 2025, to mark the 5th year
Oh, wow.
of the pandemic. So
Cool. All right, let's take a listen. You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York, WKCR HD1. Glad you're with us. David Ellenbogen here. I am joined by the great Michael Gordon, composer of that last piece. It's entitled Loved, and it's written for 7 vibraphones or other pitched metal, and it was recorded by Bang a Can's own David Cosson, the great percussionist. Do you know why your piece Gene takes a drink? I mean, people consider Spotify evil. Maybe, I don't know. It's great for the. It's great to discover music. For some reason, that seems to have 5 million plus plays.
Yeah.
What happened?
The reason is because it was used. The very opening of it was used in an Apple iPhone commercial back
Ah,
when there was something called the iPhone 6, right? I think we're what, on
we're around.
15,
Oh
right?
God, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so someone over there at Apple, whoever does that, found the piece and linked it to this kind of homemade video of these flocks of birds kind of, swarming through the sky, and put them together, and was taken on the iPhone 6. So I think when people hear, when it's widely disseminated, then there are a lot of people who like, oh, what's that music, and they search it down.
Yeah. Well, it is a beautiful piece. I mean, it gives you a great yeah. Something happens when you listen to that piece. One starts to kind of float or something like that. Uh,
Originally, I wrote the piece with filmmaker named Bill Morrison, who I've done a lot of work with. The biggest piece we've done together is a work called Decasia. Bill Morrison takes in Decasia. He took footage from early movies, usually back made in the 1920s or earlier, in which the film has decayed. The nitrate, was very volatile, and then he prints these pictures and then cuts them together, re-edits scenes from different movies that are all, it's very trippy, very psychedelic looking. And I've done I think 15 of these films with Bill, but in this case he actually put a camera on the collar of his cat, and his cat was named Gene. And
oh,
just a little film, you actually don't know. You're just kind of scurrying across through a garden for 6 or 7 minutes, which is the length of this. If Gene takes a drink, you're scurrying through the garden. It's on YouTube. You can see the film on YouTube. It's very, very beautiful at the level of a small animal, but you don't really know what's going on until Gene goes over to this little pool of water and starts drinking out of the water, and in the reflection of the water, which you can see in the camera, you can see Gene's whiskers, and so that's the derivation of the title.
nice. And,
It's a fun video to see, and accessible on YouTube. So
cool. Yeah, let's take a listen. That was Gene Takes a Drink off the album Field Recordings by the Bang on the Can All Stars and composed by our very special guest today, the prolific composer, Michael Gordon. The sound of a cat slurping has made its way into some of your most recent works, right? The GFEDCBA, is that what it's called?
Oh, right. That's right. That's right. Were you you heard some of that last, you were up there last summer
Yes,
and
and also at Carnegie Hall for the Kronos Quartet
oh, right,
performance.
right, right. Yeah, they like that. They like that cat slurping. So
It's a beautiful sound in general. A cat slurping, I think, is a very happy. It feels like all is right in the world when you hear that. So, a couple more questions for you, because there's, whenever I've told you, off mic before that I had helped, was the founder of the Brooklyn Raga Massive Artist Collective. And we always said amongst ourselves, like, all right, if we have any success, we're gonna all want to kill each other in a few years. But somehow you guys have, maintained and grown as an organization. Seem very, um, you know, it seems like a very family type atmosphere. So what do you think the key has been to kind of the longevity and the collaborative nature of Bang on a Can All Stars, and the festivals and all that?
we've got just great people, and we really have never had personality issues. I think you know, when people have different opinions, there's kind of just, you know, it's never no one draws a line in the sand and says it's got to be this way or that way. I think so. I think we're able to. Um, I think we're able to get stuff accomplished. I mean, everyone involved with the organization is a musician of some sorts, and so everyone in the administrative part of Bang on the Can, which is built up over the last 30 years and is led by Kenny Savelson, who is a drummer, and back in the day toured all over the world with several different bands, and was has been been with Bang on the Can close to 30 years. When he turned 30 and he was washing dishes, between a tour, one of his tours, he was like, well, I have to get a job doing something. And he was lucky that the stars aligned and he ran into us. And he's just totally great. And the whole team is great. So what can I say? Musicians are great, and they're also, without they're natural producers, because when you go out and you start playing, you have to have people there. You call your friends, you put up posters, you do whatever, social media, whatever it is, you want to get people there. Hey, tell your friends, tell whatever. Oh, I've got to have a piano, or I need an amplifier, or whatever. So musicians are very at a very early age learn how to put on concerts and get people there, and so yeah, so we work very well together. We've done a lot of projects. Not, I think that there's a time when we feel like, oh, this project has run its course, and we need to change it up or switch it up. One of the things I love about this group of people and working with Bang on a Can is that we can move very quickly when COVID hit and everything shut down. Within 6 weeks, we started um, a 12-hour streaming marathon in which we commissioned all new pieces.
Wow.
No one had anything to do, and everyone was at home, and people very quickly figured out how to stream from their kitchen or living room. And we just, we did 10 12-hour streaming programs and commissioned something like 100 pieces of music, and had musicians all over the world playing from their living room. And we were just able to do that, and almost immediately. And so this is, it's just a great team to work with, great group of people. And I think everybody is committed to the mission of audience building for artists who are not doing mainstream music or not doing commercial or popular music. And there's an audience out there, so we're rewarded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, the last thing I just wanted to ask you about, I mean, you have such an interesting personal background. Your family, um, I guess you were born in Nicaragua and made your way to Miami at a young age. So how'd the family end up in Nicaragua?
Well, my parents are both Polish Jews, and they're basically my father's family was, you know, his family had left Poland at different points. His father, my grandfather, really deserted the family, but some stories, or left Poland, went to Cuba. My grandmother chased after him and couldn't take all of her children, left my father in Poland in the 1920s, went to Cuba to find her husband. He, I guess, did not want to stick around, so he left Cuba and went to Central America, to Guatemala, and then to Nicaragua. My father was, basically left alone as a 12-year-old, and couldn't get out. Just was lucky enough to get out of Poland in '39,
Wow.
right before the borders were closed and the Nazis basically took over the country. So, very fortunate story. He he came to the United States, was drafted, spent the war in the Philippines, and came back. Um, went to Nicaragua several times to visit his father. Came back. He had started a chicken farm in New Jersey. Met my mother, and she was not going to live on a chicken farm. She was like, what he said, you have two choices. You can, if you want to marry me, you can live on a chicken farm, or we can go to Managua. And she said, okay, definitely not the chicken farm. So that's how we ended up in in Nicaragua.
Wow. Amazing.
That's it. That's the story.
Woo. You know, you don't want history to be something that happens to you, but I guess that's that's how it works, right? I mean, and what do you know what town in Poland your family was in? Do you know the name of the city or the
Oh yeah. Um, my father was from Jatslava.
uh-huh.
That's what it's called today. It's between Vilnius, which is in Lithuania, and Minsk, which is now in Belarus. Jatslava is in Belarus now. So it's one of those places that was, the borders always kept shifting. And so it was Poland,
Yeah.
Russia, Germany, Lithuania. Um, so that's the story. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I guess those jungle sounds of Nicaragua they made their ways into your ears as a kid. Did
who
you
knows?
or
Who
yeah.
knows? I don't know. That's a very good question. Um, something made its way into my ears. But my mother loved classical music, and we had a piano, and so that's the story. It's like, here's the piano, and I was like, you know, no, no, we didn't have a phone or television in Nicaragua, but we had a record player and a piano. So,
What were the killer records that you had?
well, okay, I lived there till I was 8.
Right.
So the killer record was called Tubby the Tuba. And
I'm
also,
familiar.
you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what it is?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's,
It was
it's
like
an odd,
all the different instruments in the orchestra or something like that.
it's
Yeah.
it's something like that.
Yeah.
It's a story of a tuba play. The tuba wants to play a melody. It's like
Right.
the tuba's just tired of just playing these bass notes, and he's so depressed. He leaves the rehearsal. The tuba's probably a they and not a he, right? And the tuba walks out into the forest and hears the frog and goes, oh, well, the frog can sing a song, and here's the bird, and the bird can sing a song. Why can't I have a melody? And then finally the tuba goes back to rehearsal and gets this melody to play. So that's the
Okay, so that's our segue to listen to your music for the low quartet. The
okay.
that was all low instruments inspired by perhaps Tubby the Tuba somewhere deep in your subconscious.
I'm sure.
That was the Low Quartet, composed in 1985 by our very special guest, Michael Gordon. It was written for bass clarinet, bass saxophone, trombone, and double bass, or any four low instruments. It could also be available for four bass clarinets. And we're lucky enough to have him here because the Loud Weekend is coming to Mass Mocha August 1st through 4th. I'm so excited that you're going to be premiering a piece for Gamelan. I learned three, a few interesting things having people involved in Gamelan on the radio shows. One was that it was a guy who makes gamelan instruments, and he was saying that generally the entire orchestra is made from one solid piece of metal. I guess they mine a huge piece of ore, and the entire gong orchestra is made at the same time, and then over time it ages together, which is pretty amazing. And then I remember learning that gamelan, almost all Western instruments are made to like reduce the beatings, the what was, but gamelan instruments are almost the opposite. They're made to maximize the what was, that when you have things subtly in slightly different tones, the beating that occurs. And then the last was just also something from liner notes that they would have, excuse me, they would have temples, I guess in Bali or Java, and sometimes on the temple walls, they'd actually have the gamelan ensemble would be on the top of the walls outside the temples. And it seemed such an evocative image to imagine walking through kind of the thick jungle and hearing a gamelan in the distance as you're approaching the temple, and what a transporting, transcendent experience, mythical or divine experience it must feel in that time to enter a temple and hear the sounds in all three dimensions. So anyway, with that whole idea dump, yeah, maybe you could tell us about this piece and what inspired it.
Yeah, so I have a new piece being played on Loud Weekend, and it's called Sea Salt, and it's written for the Queen's College Gamelan, which is called Yawana Sari. And as you said, gamelan is gamelan is an Indonesian orchestra that is mostly made out of metals. They're metallophones, and there are a whole bunch of interesting things about the gamelan, but just musical things. One is that the tuning of these metal instruments is not set and changes from village to village or district to district slightly. Another thing about the instruments is, as you mentioned, the instruments are actually made in pairs, and the pairs are slightly out of tune with each other in order to create this shimmering sound. And the shimmering sound, as you call it, beating, which is exactly what it is. It's the sounds, the tones are so close together that they, in a certain sense, interfere with each other, and they start beating. You can actually hear the beating, and that's this kind of shimmer that these instruments have, which is very beautiful. And one of the things I think for someone coming to this tradition that isn't immersed in it is that they also have a different, the performance technique is different, and it takes a little while to wrap your head around that. Though the gamelan is an orchestra of about 20 people, many of the members of the gamelan are play in pairs. partly for this shimmering, but partly because there's this technique which is related to a medieval or Renaissance technique in Western music called hocketing, in which the melodies are split up between two instruments, and the two instruments go back and forth very quickly, and together, combined, they make a melody. So it's a fascinating way of thinking about performance, and really it's almost impossible to duplicate on in any other kind of music without having this very intensive training in this very fast hocketing that Indonesian musicians or gamelan musicians do. So this piece also has an electric guitar and an electric bass guitar.
Nice.
So I've added a little bit of amplified Western sound to the traditional Balinese sound that makes up this piece. So
yeah, and there's such a fascinating, to me, connection between, I guess, how gamelan was performed in one of the world's fairs in Paris, I guess in the 1880s, and people like Debussy and these impressionist composers heard it, and that led to all of this. I mean, to me, it's almost like the original psychedelic music or something like that. The roots of some of this. I guess the minimalism and all that. Do you hear that as well inside the music?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And part of it is that that gamelan music is rhythmic. The basis of it is rhythmic, and so the harmonic world is much more limited than in Western music. So in Western music, we have these 12 notes.
Mm-hmm.
And many gamelan orchestras have either 5 notes or 7 notes. So the pitch content is limited, while the rhythmic content is much more demanding than Western music, right? And there's a lot of interplay there. But so when you hear Debussy, you can hear the direct connection between Debussy having heard this and going, oh, I can, what we call the pentatonic scale. I know this is all nerd talk, but what we call the pentatonic scale in Western music is basically a kind of Balinese scale.
Mm.
And you hear in a lot of Debussy that he's starting to limit the pitch material, instead of what was happening at the end of the 19th century with Mahler and Wagner, where they're expanding, they're trying to, expand the harmony and expand pitch material. Debussy, it really is starting to limit pitch material and going, oh, can I write a piece of music with just 5 pitches, right? Or 7 pitches, right? As opposed to using 12 pitches, right? And that's a direct inspiration from having heard Balinese gamelan,
Wow.
Indonesian gamelan.
Well, I am super excited to hear that piece, and I'm excited for the Loud Weekend. I hope we inspire some folks. It's August 1st to 3rd at Mass Mocha. And, even if you're hearing this podcast asynchronously, it's already happened, you can go next year, or you can go to many of the Bang on a Can marathons and events that happen around town. And obviously you are a super prolific musician, so you have just dozens of albums, and one can spend a long time investigating all of the work of Michael Gordon. So yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And just, for newcomers, Loud Weekend starts on Thursday night, August 1st, and ends late Saturday night, August 3rd. And in that 48 hours, there are over 30 concerts of music. And so there's a lot of music. You're not going to be able to hear all of it. I don't think you're going to be able to hear half of it, but the audience comes and they run around from concert to concert, sometimes just walking in to hear 10 or 15 minutes and then running off to another concert to catch that one, or, so, and all takes place at Mass MoCA, one of the really great contemporary art museums. So,
Cool. Is there a piece that we should of yours that you'd like us to play to take us out?
um, well, yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. You have what? You have Spotify there? You have
Yeah, I
access?
can. I have access to everything. Yeah.
Okay. Um, well, let's see. Well, I see, a piece I really like is this piece called Trance that I wrote a while back, and I see on Spotify that Trance 4, they're in movements,
Okay.
but Trance 4 is a nice piece. It's 7 minutes long, and yeah,
Cool.
that might be nice.
All
Yeah.
right, we'll take a listen. And many, many thanks to Michael Gordon for taking the time. And this was fun.